I'm really excited to introduce this next artist. He's a commercial and fine art photographer, and he's part of the Picker Artists building in Nashua. He does really, really good work, and I've known him for a really long time. My name is Sid Ceaser, and I am a commercial portrait photographer. I've always, since I was a little kid, I remember my parents showing me a Polaroid camera where you can take an image and it immediately pops out. And from there, I used to set up little battles with my toys and stuff. And I would photograph them, and then I'd have these little Polaroid prints and stuff. And then over time, making images has always been around. In my 20s, I went to college late. I spent most of my 20s working at just about every record store that's in southern New Hampshire. And the whole time I was making little mixtapes, and I would design little album jackets for it. And I would photograph things and then turn those into little cassette tape jackets and design things and stuff. And then right around 1999, early 2000, I decided it was time to buckle down and sort of go back to school. So I went to the New Hampshire Institute of Art, and they had a 4-year BFA program in photography. So I did that. I graduated in 2004, and then I immediately got a studio in the Nashua Mill Yard, and that's where I've been since 2004. I work a lot with corporations and businesses that need headshots for their employees. I do a lot of corporate photography as well. And then I also work a lot with bands and musicians that need images for promotional and press kit and publicity and CD and album and packaging artwork. And then my personal work, when I'm not shooting real people, I have a fixation with pop culture. I'm really into movies and toys and anime and comic books. So a lot of my personal work when I'm not photographing real people are of small toys and action figures, and I try to make them look like real people. So if it's not real people, it's things that look like real people, but there's always something that looks like a person in front of my camera. So when a musician or a band comes to me, a lot of times they don't know what they want. A lot of times they've seen things that other musicians have used, so we need to prevent them from replicating something that already is out there. But we can sort of find a little taste of that and incorporate it into some sort of new work. So a lot of times they come in, they don't really know what they want. Sometimes they want location work. Sometimes they want studio work. I have a tendency to shoot on like solid white backgrounds so that they can not only use it as, like an 8x10, but they can stretch it to make like a concert poster, or they can use them for like Facebook graphics. As long as they have a total white surrounding, you can stretch that white in all kinds of different directions. So you can make squares. You can use it for a whole bunch of different things. So a lot of times they come to me and they'll have images at the end of a session and they won't exactly know what to do with them. So usually I do these little mock-ups of like, well, here's what it looks like as a Twitter icon, and here's what it looks like as a Facebook thing, and here's what it looks like as a 13x19 gig poster with negative space on top, so you can, write down your gig where you're going to be playing and what your tour dates are. And then sometimes they want location work. So luckily, the nice thing about where my studio is we have Mines Falls Park, which is 325 acres of nature preserve, basically right out my back door. So for location shoots, sometimes they don't know what they want, so we'll just sort of play it by ear, and we'll just load a bag of gear, and I'll go out with them, and we'll spend a day going from location to location. They'll bring a couple of different changes of clothes with them, and by the end of the day, we've got a bunch of images, usually with different locations that they can sort of select and pick from, and we'll end up with gig posters and promotional materials and stuff like that. But usually the first thing I suggest for any client, whether that's a portrait client or a musician, is just to take a look at the work on my website. And I've got a Flickr page where it has extended sessions from each client, just to get a feel for my work and the style of my work. And sometimes people don't necessarily like that style of work. So just take a look and make sure it's something that you really gravitate to. To me, the best client is the client that calls and it's just like, I've been through 8 different websites, and the minute I brought your website up, there was just something there that just called out to me. So find whoever you go with, find that one little perfect thing that you just respond to so positively. Usually I try to cater it to the client. Some of them just want a quick headshot where they come in and they spend about an hour and a half, and we get a really nice tight head and shoulders shot. Or sometimes they want a sort of a full thing where I'm going to make sure that we do at least 5 different locations and a couple of outfit changes, so that they've got a bunch of different things at the end of the shoot. They've got a bunch of different things that they can use. They've got an image from this location and they've got an image from this location. So even if they're promoting, say, one record, they still have enough images to keep everything fresh, and they can sort of, schedule things months out. So it really depends on what they're looking for. Typically, the sessions that I do in the studio are usually basic headshot sessions, or we'll do sort of extended sessions where we'll do a head and shoulders headshot, and then we'll do a 3/4 shot. And then if we're shooting on white, we sort of do a complete head to toe shot. And then again, because we're shooting them on white, they can sort of stretch that white out, and they can use it for Facebook banners, and they can use it for posters, and they can use it for all kinds of social media purposes. Usually when I work with a client, I show them most of the shoot as we shot it unprocessed, and then they select images from those, and then I then process the selected images, and then that's sort of what's delivered. So like as opposed to like a wedding photographer where they just shoot hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shots, usually I'm dealing with clients where the final delivered image is usually a number of somewhere around 1 to 6 or 7 depending. So I'm a very small volume shooter, and usually from each location I try to make sure that they get 1 or 2 shots that they can use per location. So it's sort of small volume because we're going for that one perfect marketable commercial shot. And then, once those images have been processed, it's just a matter of file delivery, and depending on how they want it, if they want the images on a CD or a DVD, or if they have a Dropbox folder, I can just upload the images to them and they can use them that way. I was trained on film, so it's been interesting in the transition of film to digital, where you're not dealing with contact sheets and tactile prints anymore. Now you're dealing with uploading files to Dropbox and digital delivery and that kind of thing, which is nice because it's much faster. People can come in now and they can get a headshot usually same day within a few hours, whereas when I dealt with film, a lot of times you have to develop and you have to make contact sheets, and it's just a longer process. So digital is definitely nicer in the commercial realm because it's just everybody wants everything so quickly nowadays. The nice thing about shooting toys is they're really small, so basically anything can be a location. But there are days when I'll just come into the studio and I set up a little table, and then I'll do a little set. I've been getting more into creating little environments for the toys to be in, and I've been sort of I've been taking toys from movies and then recreating scenes from movies with these little dioramas and the toys. And for me, that is literally all about playing. Like that's just getting lights, and I've got a smoke machine, and I've got colored lights, and I've got little finger lights. And it's just about spending an afternoon just playing around and sort of finding how the light works with the toys and which environment works best for them. So it's just a process. It's sort of like being a movie director where you're just doing a bunch of different takes, and then you're going for that one final take that looks just perfect. Rainy days, it's good to just set the toys up, and it helps keep my gray matter working. It keeps my brain flowing, helps me stay creative. And then it's because I'm shooting things that look like people, I can incorporate ideas both ways. I can take things I do when I shoot real people and I can incorporate it into shooting toys, or I can take things that I've done with toys, and especially with musicians, they love the creativity side. I can take things that I've done with toys and I can use the toys as sort of a test and see if I can scale it up to a human level size. So it's kind of good. It pays off both ways, the sort of the fine art stuff and then the commercial photography. To me, it's if you can mush them both together, that's the perfect way to integrate, taking creativity, incorporating into commercial work, so that no matter what you do, it all feels the same. It's all got the same style to it. And people can look at it and be like, oh, okay, I understand. I can equate this image with that image, and I sort of get the feel of his work. Because I did a 4-year fine art degree, I think I have a little bit more of a background of art history, and an appreciation for all the other arts that are not photography. So, painting and illustration and drawing. So a lot of my work, some of the comments I've received on some of my work with musicians is they say I have a very painterly feel to some of my images. And I think that's partially because I try to keep things really, really clean. I don't try to overprocess my work. And a lot of times I try to shoot as if I was shooting on film. So I try not to overshoot a lot. And I try to go into a shoot saying, all right, let's pretend we've got 6 rolls of film and we have 24 exposures per roll. And I need to get my job finished within those parameters and stuff. But I like to keep my images clean. And I try not to overprocess everything so that it looks like it's been messed with in the computer. The toughest part is the business side. I went to a fine arts college. There wasn't anything about business, self-promotion, marketing, any of that. I came out of fine arts school not knowing how to deal with any of that. I had a foundation of how to deal with galleries, which serve as advocates of your work, your fine art work. But I didn't have any background when it came to, marketing my work, getting my name out there, that kind of thing. So that's sort of been the big crutch. I've been baby stepping things as we go. So the hardest thing for me is just, finding clients. It's a day in, day out thing of sending out marketing materials and trying to figure out who my clients are, who my target audience is, and then trying to get on their radar. And that's been the hardest thing. But I think after a while, once you start doing enough work and you start putting it out there, I think and people start seeing it. Not only does the mail things that you're mailing into clients work, but also just word of mouth starts spreading about how good you are and if your work is really good, and you can find a lot of clients that way. And then I think just over time, I think the more you share your work with the public and the more people see it, they just start remembering you. And I think it's just sort of a longevity game where if you're around long enough and you've got enough work out there, eventually people are going to start seeing it and they're going to start remembering your name and your work and your style. And yeah, that's probably been the biggest struggle, is just as a fine artist who's trying to do more commercial work, just the whole, it's a business, man. Like just trying to get the whole business thing out there and trying to get clients. A lot of times people suggest you want to send, the portfolios you want to send should be the more creative stuff. So the stuff that shows you can think outside the box, that you can problem solve creatively, and that's, it's weird how me sending a portfolio that has toys in it gets me a commercial headshot job, because that has nothing to do with anything. But I think it's creative directors like to see that you've got something other than just like your programmed like headshot style. Which is weird, because it's, it's like how you go from looking at, photographs of little tiny spacemen to photographing a large company and doing all their headshots and stuff like that. The connect is hard to see there. So that's really strange. And then another thing too is like, the hardest thing about running a business, like being self-employed photographer, hardest thing about, asking for big money jobs is asking for the big money. And, and you gotta, there's a learning curve that you have to sort of get over and start being comfortable with, like, okay, I bid on the job and either I was too much or somebody underbid or whatever and I didn't get the job, move on. And the other thing that's nice to remember is not everybody's going to like my work, and that's cool. And I have to stop being worried about that, because all I'm looking for is my core tribe of people that respond to my work and they want to work with me, and not to worry about everybody. And that's been a big struggle is, when I first got out of college, I was used to doing assignments for teachers. So they would come in and say, okay, for the next 6 weeks, you have to do this. For the next 12 weeks, you have to have a body of work that does this. So when I got out of college, I didn't have any assignments and I didn't know what to do. I just froze. And so, so my mother was just like, okay, well, if you want to make $1 million, you should take pictures of people's pets, because that's where the money is. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll do an experiment. So my parents have these 2 little Shih Tzu dogs, and we brought them into my studio. And within 10 minutes, one of them had deposited something on the floor. So mentally, I started making a checklist, and I'm like, okay, I don't want anything that leaves remnants on the floor. And then my father was like, if you want to make lots of money, he's like, you should take pictures of people's kids, because they'll pay all kinds of money for that. So I had a friend, she had a 2-year-old, brought her into the studio, 2-year-old, for an hour and a half. She just ran back and forth the studio, screaming and yelling and screaming, and she would not mind. So mentally, I'm like, okay, like checking off in my head, I don't want to deal with pets, I don't want to deal with little kids. And so the long story short is you just figure out what your niche is and then just worry about that. I spent all my 20s working at record stores. I have a huge music collection. I make mixtapes with intricate jacket designs. I'm surrounded by music all the time. Hey, one day I walked into the studio and it was like somebody kind of slapped me in the face, and it was just like, why aren't you working with musicians? Like that's your key demographic right there. And the same thing with headshots. I love doing headshots because I never know who's going to come into the studio. I never know what the story is going to be. To me, headshots is learning about that person and that person learning about me and who I am as a small business, as much as it is me learning who they are and who they work for and what their company's all about. And I think if you share stories back and forth with anybody that you work with, there's a larger chance of them going and sharing your work with somebody else and being like, oh, you know what, I just worked with Sid and he was really good and he's into music and all this kind of stuff. Give him a shot. My first studio after I got out of college was 2004. I moved into the Picker building, which is located in Nashua Mill Yard. And at the time, there wasn't a whole influx of studios in that building. There was a gallery and there was a couple of artists on different floors. But from 2004 until we moved out of the building in 2016, it had become the whole building, 4 floors of small businesses and creative entrepreneurs and creative talent and artists and freelance and designers. And it was sort of the building that people would point to the Picker building and say, oh, this is like the Western Ave studios down in Lowell, or this is like the Button Factory that's located in Portsmouth, where it's the highest concentration of creative talent in the city. And we lost that right around 2016 when the owner decided to retire and sell the building. And so there was a core group of people. There was about 9 or 10 artists that didn't want to leave the area, didn't want to leave their studios. And so they formed the Picker Artists. And as a group, we started looking for other buildings around Nashua. And we ultimately ended up almost across the street from where we were. And we're now at 3 Pine Street, which is attached to Gate City Fence in the Mill Yard. And it's been nice. It's been a change. But I guess it's good to change things up every once in a while, right? And it's been good. It feels good. It's a beautiful space. Yeah, it's very inviting, and it's a lot easier to locate too, which is weird. We're only across the street, but it was really hard to get to our building. But now we're right off the Broad Street Parkway, right in Nashua, so you can find us really easily. And you can find us on the web at pickerartist.com. When I was in the old building, I was way up on the 4th floor, which was the least used floor, and I was sort of the most isolated. And since I've been in the new building, which has sort of an open concept when you get to a certain level on the ceiling, it's nice to hear productivity of other people. It's nice to hear people actually doing things. So it's nice. You can come in here on any day of the week, and you can hear Renaissance Glassworks working with glass or working with a client, or you can hear Gail Moriarty working with jewelry, or you can hear Daryl Robichar next door, who's a woodworker, and he only uses hand tools. He doesn't use electric tools, and he builds, tables and chairs, and you can hear him, working away. So that's kind of nice. You come in, and even if you're not motivated, just the sounds that are surrounding you can help you get motivated because other people are doing things, and that's good. That's a good thing. People are creating stuff out of nothing, which is kind of neat. Creative businesses have really suffered recently since everything started shutting down, and a large portion of my client base is large companies. So a lot of those companies have either furloughed or laid off their employees, or they've shut down, or most of them are working from home. So since March, it's been really difficult. Everything's sort of been shut down. And so I've just been sort of tightening my belt and holding out and just reminding clients, I'm still here, and I'm not sick, and I haven't been sick. And if and when you guys are ready to get back to work, just let me know because I'm here for you. So it's been hard. It's been hard to see friends that own small businesses that have had to sort of shut down because their revenues have just completely disappeared. So I don't even know. I don't even know how to explain it. It's really disheartening to see everything that's going on. And I think we're doing everything we can to just stay here. Photography is my profession. I've been doing it since 2004, so I'm in it for the long haul. So I just have to hope I can wait it out and just be there when everything starts to pick back up again. Or figure out ways to sort of change things around. The hard thing about photography, especially portrait photography, is I work with people face to face. So I have to figure out, what are new ways I can still do portrait photography that still retains the quality that I want my clients to have. I don't want to shoot clients through a computer monitor or anything like that because there's, at least one generation that sort of just doesn't feel right. So I'm one of those people where it's like I got to work with people. So I've got to figure out ways that I can still work with people and be safe, until we've sort of either figured out how to, restrain this virus, or we've learned ways to work around it. But it's been crazy. It's weird. It's so weird. But it's given me more time to do personal work. So that's been kind of nice. My top tip is communication. If you cannot communicate with your clients, then there's no point, being a photographer. It's as much as it is about photography, it's being able to communicate and speak to somebody. I can't tell you how many student interns I've worked with where, we're working with a subject and they just freeze up and they don't know how to speak and they don't know how to give directions. So you've got to be a personable person. You have to be able to troubleshoot. You have to be able to, if you're on a job and something goes wrong, you've got to be able to troubleshoot your way out of that on the fly. But the biggest thing is you've got to communicate. You've got to have a personality. You've got to be nice. Just be a nice person. Be a nice person to the client. Be a nice person to anybody. Be friendly and manage expectations. A lot of times clients don't know they don't know the process. They come into a studio and there's all this lighting and you're standing in front of them and you have a giant camera in front of your face and sometimes there's no eye contact and they don't know what's going on. So you've got to walk them through the process and explain every little thing that's going on so that they feel comfortable in your space. For headshots, when somebody comes in, I explain every single thing I have. I'm like, this is my main light, this is my background lights. This light's gonna go off for a second because I need to do a test exposure and make sure everything looks good. These are light stands, I'm gonna move these, make sure I don't smack somebody in the head with them. But the more you explain the whole process to them, the more comfortable they'll feel. Because otherwise they're surrounded by stuff that they don't know you really, they don't know what all this stuff is used for, so they can get very uncomfortable. So yeah, as much as you want to be a photographer, you've got to communicate. Like if you can't communicate, you're gonna have a really hard time. Being creative is a language, and there are certain ways that only people can communicate. For that, some people might be really good with baking, and some people might be really good with building things out of wood and carpentry. Some people are express themselves through music. For me, it's always been a still image, crafting something out of a still image and that didn't exist previously. So to me, it's when somebody comes to me and they're like, well, I don't really know what I want, but I know that I want something done in your style with me in it. To me, that gives me a chance to use, light and tone and texture and shape and color to create something with someone else. It's an organic process. It's a back and forth thing. They're just as much involved in the process as I am creating the image. To me, that's how I can speak. One of the other things that I believe as a commercial shooter is take chances, and it doesn't hurt to ask. I had two musicians that I've loved since I was, 17 years old, and it's Jennifer Kimball and Jonathan Brooke. They were a band called The Story in the 90s, and they have since broken up, and it just so happened that there was a 2-week period where the two of them were going to be sort of touring in the area. And I was just like, out of the complete blue, I just emailed them. And I was just like, you don't know who I am. I'm not some crazy freak fan, but if you would ever entertain the idea of letting me make a portrait of you, just as a thank you for all the music that you've generated and how important your music has been to me over the years. And both of them said yes on different occasions, and we went and I did very quick shoots with them. But like one of them, the stuff I did with Jennifer Kimball, we got along so well that she ended up hiring me to create images for her next album. And that would not have existed if I hadn't just taken a chance. The worst people can say is no, and I think that no is a very scary thing. You don't want to be rejected. But at some point you just get over that. Like, if they don't like my work, or their schedule's too busy, or it's just not meant to be, that's cool. At least I took a chance. So always take that chance. If there's somebody out there you want to work with and you've never had a chance to, and it can't hurt. And now I've definitely got one relationship out of that. And then the other person I photographed, her, Jonathan, the last 2 times she's come through the area, I've emailed her in advance and I'm just like, hey, I see you're coming through. We're going to be at the concert. Can I just get a couple images? And both times now she's been like, yep. She's like, I'll see you when we get there. So just reach out. Like, even you never know. You never know what's going to happen. So it's always worth taking the chance. And that doesn't matter if you're a commercial shooter or if you're a fine art shooter or whatever. Just ask. The worst you can get is a no. And then you just move along and you move on to the next thing. Yeah. So that was good. I'm located here in the Nashua Mill Yard in the Picker Artist Building. You know, I can do studio work on different color backgrounds. I do headshots in studio. I do a lot of location work. Take a look at my website. Fine art work is at sidceaserfineart.com. That's all the stuff related to toys. My wife is also a photographer, and that's sarahceaser.com. She does landscapes and she likes farm animals and stuff. Find me on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Twitter, and just Google my name and you'll be able to find me. I'm out there. Thank you for joining our virtual Art Week. City Arts Nashua appreciates the support of our sponsors and you, our viewers. Please continue to support our local artists and our musicians and theater groups. For more information on arts in Nashua, please visit cityartsnashua.org.